Welcome to this special edition of Hannity. I'm Kellyanne Conway in for Sean. Today, a massive series of wins for President Trump at the U.S. Supreme Court. First, in a 6-3 vote, the Supreme Court rebuked the partisan activist judges who tried to impede Trump's agenda with dozens of nationwide injunctions. Those nationwide injunctions are now over, and the despotic behavior from America's far-left lower court judges has been held in check. Watch this.
Taking power away from these absolutely crazy radical left judges is a tremendous, this is such a big day. This is such a big day, but this is a very big moment, and it gives power back to people that should have it, including Congress, including the presidency. And it only takes bad power away from judges. It really doesn't take power. It takes bad power, sick power, and unfair power. This is really also a decision based on common sense. It didn't work the other way. It was a disaster where somebody from a certain location in a very liberal state or a liberal judge or a liberal group of judges could tie up a whole country for years because their decision would sometimes take years to overturn.
Not only is this a huge win for President Trump and the rule of law, but it was made even sweeter with a striking rebuke of far-left Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. In the majority opinion, Justice Amy Coney Barrett stated, quote, "We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary." Wow. Coney Barrett even mocked Ketanji Brown Jackson for her failing to analyze a statute because it involved, quote, boring legalese. Meanwhile, Ketanji Brown Jackson was also on the losing side of Mahmoud versus Taylor. In another 6-3 decision, the court ruled that parents do, in fact, have the final say on their children's education, and they can opt out of LGBTQ curriculum. Take a look.
Sir, on the transgender ruling, the Supreme Court ruling that parents with religious objections can pull their kids out of public school lessons that use LGBTQ materials. Pam brought it up. Your reaction to that ruling today, sir?
I think the ruling was a great ruling, and I think it's a great ruling for parents. It's really a ruling for parents. They lost control of the schools. They lost control of their child. And this is a tremendous victory for parents. And I'm not surprised by it, but I am surprised that it went this far. It took us to bring life back to normal. So it's wonderful. It's parental. And I kept saying, we will give you back your parental rights. They were taken away, and this is a tremendous victory for parents.
For anyone against unchecked government power, this was a very, very good day. Here now with analysis, Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley. Jonathan Turley, what an incredible day at the Supreme Court. Let's have you break it down. And also, I think people are very curious how this does impact things like sanctuary city funding, birthright citizenship, and other issues at play.
Well, thank you, Kellyanne. I think that the first thing the president should do is go buy a lottery ticket because he's having a heck of a week. If I was going to get a lottery ticket, it'd probably be today. But this is a huge win for him. It does negate what has been a stumbling block. These judges have been throwing sand in the works in many of his policies, from immigration to birthright citizenship to DOGE cuts. That will presumably now be tamped down. If these judges try to circumvent that, I think they'll find an even more expedited path to a Supreme Court that's going to continue to reverse some of these, lift some of these injunctions. As you noted, the opinion was really radioactive in this takedown of Justice Jackson. It's rare. I've been covering the Supreme Court for decades. It's rare to see that type of exchange. The important thing to remember is that, Justice Barrett delivered what was essentially a pile driver, but she didn't do it alone. I mean, her colleagues signed on to this, and I think it's very clear that the majority is getting tired of the histrionics and the hysteria that seems to be growing a bit on the left side of the court. But this was really an astonishing takedown by the justice. But it's the hyperbole that's coming out of the dissent that is so notable. Justice Sotomayor, in that Maryland case, said that giving parents the ability to opt out of a few lessons was going to, quote, create chaos and probably end public education. Then you had Justice Jackson saying this could very well essentially be the death of democracy. It's the type of hyperbole that most justices have avoided.
It is, and if it sounds familiar to our viewers, it means that they're clued into what is being said on some other channels. I mean, we just can't have Supreme Court justices who sound like partisan pundits. And when it comes to that, I'm really just struck by Amy Coney Barrett going after Ketanji Brown Jackson. And it seems like these nationwide injunctions, just to back up a minute, these were low-level activist judges, one person trying to have a nationwide stop on the power of our executive, in this case, the presidency of the United States. And what do you make of the non-Ketanji Brown Jackson dissent from Sotomayor and Kagan? What was their objection? Why can't they? Why would they want one judge to hold up a president's authority?
Well, it was particularly notable to see Justice Kagan with the dissents, because during the Obama administration, she described these national or universal injunctions as essentially ridiculous. She said you can't have a government like this. But she somehow found her comfort zone in the Trump administration. And she never really has explained how she could pull that 180 when it comes to injunctions. But they said that, no, these judges need to be able to exercise this power. You know, the response, particularly of Jackson, but also of the dissent, is so outsized in terms of what the opinion actually said. The majority of the court said, look, you can enjoin the government to protect the parties in your case. You can enjoin the government in your given district. You can even have a national injunction if you have a national class action. Right. What you can't do is to take one person who comes into your courtroom and freeze the entire federal government nationwide based on that case. And what the justices said, the majority, is, where's your authority for this? And really, those dissenting justices don't explain where they find that.
Trump derangement syndrome in the dissent from the Supreme Court today, no doubt. And as you say in previous cases, in the moments we have left, Jonathan Trilly, do you think that we'll ever know who leaked the Dobbs decision 3.5 years ago?
I still hope that we do. That was a huge blow to the court as an institution. And I think that when we're talking about the hyperbole and the rhetoric that we saw this week, all of that's going against this culture of civility and mutual respect. I think the institution is having a crisis of identity. But that leak was the greatest of those blows. You know, in a city that literally floats on a rolling sea of leaks, the Supreme Court has been this island. And I'm hoping that the Trump administration, by reopening this case, could find the answer.
They sure are working at a volume and velocity that defies political gravity and Washington. So I share your optimism there. Jonathan Trilly, thank you very much.